Yeah, hi, I'm Ashley. I'm part of the infrastructure consultant talent community here at Avanade, particularly in the cloud engineering role. Little fun fact about me, this is my second time at Avanade, and I'm the tallest person in the Newcastle office. So if you've seen anybody very tall and gangly walking around the Cobalt, if you've been around there, good chance it was possibly me. Um, so just to kick in, I was just going to talk about one of the projects we're currently engaged with a global offshore services provider. We were initially brought into this project to create a common data environment and some cloud foundational work around the Azure platforms. This is part of an Accenture bid, so following the design, the setup and initial build of that, we then moved on to how we could automate the services that are consuming these environments. So we used a combination of Azure Arm to start with, but then quickly moved on to Terraform when the customer expressed their desire to be cloud agnostic. So using Terraform was the preferred option to go, as it can be used across multiple platforms. So as part of this automation initiative that we've been involved with, we've automated a huge portion of their infrastructure running in Azure. So we're now at the point where we can deploy entire application platforms through code with only a few parameters. So that includes all of the authentication setup where you can publish endpoints to the internet following a baseline of security standards that we've agreed with the customer, and generally removed all of the, well, not all of it, but a huge portion of the administrative overhead of having to actually manage a platform and change control. So all of these changes are initiated by the technical teams. They go through approval gates. They come to the product owners or the platform owners, who then approve the changes, and then everything happens automatically, essentially. You know, if, for example, they were migrating an application from their on-premise environment into the cloud, they wanted to publish that application through a DMZ, literally by providing a few parameters in one of our Terraform pipelines that we've created. The tooling can go off, it can publish them endpoints, it can associate all of the correct WAF policies, set up all of the high availability around that, and essentially do it all within 10 or 15 minutes across multiple geographies within Azure to provide global redundancy. So after we've done that, we're now looking at the next part of this journey with them in the cloud infrastructure. And a big problem what both this customer and a number of other customers that we have who work in remote locations or have got vessels out at sea is, how do they connect into Azure? Obviously, there's a huge problem if you're on a ship out in the middle of the ocean somewhere of getting connectivity in, if you want to send any measurable amounts of data into the platform. Similarly, if, for example, you're out on a mine site in the middle of Brazil somewhere, you're not going to have the infrastructure there to get that data up in any sort of meaningful way to provide, so not real time, but as close to real time metrics as you can for your services. So that's where we have started to engage with Microsoft and with the customer around some of the new technology around Azure Orbit. So Azure Orbit's going to provide or potentially give the customer the ability to actually, I'm not sure why that slide keeps changing, to get a faster connection into Azure using low Earth orbit satellites. And yeah, I'll move over to Chris as the slide keeps changing there. Chris, over to you.
Cheers, Ashley. Hi, my name is Chris. I would usually talk about where I've been and what I'm up to, but as you can see, I'm kind of stuck at home. So I've got this massive widescreen in front of me and this robot that you can see kind of behind me. I'm in our emerging technology team. We're quite a small team now. There's 5 of us, and we are growing. We are hiring. We look after research and development for Avanade, trying out the latest technology that Microsoft produces, as well as kind of what other startups and companies like Amazon and Google produce, so that we can test it against what Microsoft has to improve what they do. Because we're a company that loves kind of open source and Microsoft. So, I mean, what I do in my spare time, and at home, trying to both to work out and, also watch a ton of things on Netflix because there's pretty much nothing else to do while we're stuck in the house. But if we go on to the next slide, I'll talk about what you could do in our team and some of the roles that we have. So as I mentioned, we do a lot of research. We work with clients to try out new technologies. So on the far left, we had 3 of 50 spots globally in the Azure Quantum Preview, which was launched this week. So we got to try out their new quantum computer. At the bottom right, you can see Moab, which was a new project from Microsoft Reinforcement Learning, which we've been playing with to try and teach robots like this to do real useful tasks. On my Twitter, you can see it trying to make a cup of tea and failing miserably. And at the top right, you can see some of the work that we've been doing kind of around VR. So if we go onto the next slide, sorry, I told Ashley I'd pause for breath and I just haven't been. Everything we do is on our GitHub, and we're trying to do more and more with open source. We've just joined the Digital Twin Consortium to contribute to standards about how to recreate physical objects digitally, like the satellite which you saw previously with Azure Orbital, all the way through to houses and smart spaces. So we try and look at signals, as you can see on the left. We try and figure out what's going on, find out patterns, and then we figure out clients to try these things out with. So we're not just kind of sat in our back room just tinkering with these things. We actually try them out with kind of, large banks, oil rigs, get to go to all kinds of cool but also freezing and wet places to try and see how these things work in practice. So here's an example of one of our recent projects. So we started just by trying out a couple of spaces with a government body to talk to them about the future of work. The one on the left was us, the one on the right from XPRIZE. And if we go on to the next slide, what we then tried to do is test 22 different tools. So I mentioned that we see what's out there, what's happening. We've tried 22 different virtual reality products to see which ones work, which ones are just hype, which ones our clients might want to try. And then we held that future of work session, which I mentioned before. And then, and I think this is even cooler, if we go on to the next slide, we recreated one of our offices entirely in virtual reality. So we used computational generation techniques to take a CAD file and effectively try and make a blank base in Unity, putting all the walls in the right places, all the floors in the right places. And then the last bit was cheating. We handcrafted all the textures, all the pictures to make it look like our office in real life. We actually have a virtual reality set up in AltSpace, which is another Microsoft company where you can put on headsets or join from your computer so that we can all meet up in person. And if we go on to the next slide, on the left, you can see a photo of the office. So that is real life. That's what it looks like when we can actually go in. We're all working from home, as I mentioned. And on the right, that is the computer generated rendering. This is the space which you can log into with your avatar, walk around and chat with people so you can physically point. So I've got about a minute left. So if we go on to the next slide, other cool things that I mentioned were on the left, we took a skyscraper in New York and we represented it as a website to show how free and busy the building was, to do wayfinding, to tell people how to get from one place to another safely, what the temperature was like, controlling when it needs to be cleaned. So we've got smart buildings. I mentioned the work we're doing around robotics. And then finally, we're working with Microsoft to create their new intelligent store. So I'll round off if we go on to my final slide before I hand over to Vicky. You can see here, these are the things which we're focused on for the rest of the year. This is what we're hiring for. This is what we want you to join us to look into. We're looking at digital ethics. So how to build ethics into the enterprise. So that isn't just for techies. We're looking for what happens when devices don't matter. How do we share information between one company and another? How do thinking machines expand? How can they be our co-worker? So how can things like this actually be in our workplace to make things actually better for people? I've also got a mesh network in my lounge. I've got a Helium device, and we're trying out next generation infrastructure, 5G, LoRaWAN, WiMAX. And then the final thing is just how do all these things come together to help people in normal offices, normal banks, normal buildings just get their job done with these technologies. So thanks very much for listening. I talked a mile a minute, and over to you, Vicky. Cheers.
Thank you, Chris. And very quickly to say, it's a pleasure. I'm sharing the floor with you because you were the first person that I saw in a promoted video for Avanade and attract my interest. So, pleasure. So, hi everyone. I'm Vicky from Data and AI Advisory Team. And an interesting fact about me is that I love practicing meditation. Of course, lockdown permitted. I attend retreat courses for long silent periods and for anyone who knows me, especially my friends, this is against my nature, as I love talking. So the use case I'm going to present to you today is SSE Renewables. And SSE Renewables is a leading developer and operator of renewables energy across UKI, and is working with us to apply technology to reimagine its operations. So SSE wanted a completely whole new outlook to operate at much more competitive level than they did 10 years ago. We created the digital ventures, and as you can see in this basically slide, this is our logo. So there is a small surprise why we picked this logo, and especially the puffins, a little bit later on in the end. So we help them to connect with technology. And we brought Microsoft and Avanade as partners to show ways outside of normal thinking. We brought technology on the table, and it was that light bulb moment through different workshops effectively that many ideas arise. So we selected 3 use cases for them: puffin monitoring, field services, hydro catchment monitoring. So the first use case that I'm going to run you through, and next slide, thank you, Ashley, is Field Health and Safety app. Effectively, we built a health and safety app for wind turbine operators to save lives. The idea was to completely work differently, promote innovation. We use different skills, widgets, Google Maps, to know if someone is in distress that can save lives. We are basically we are on the day 3 of the sprint 1, where we are productionizing the health and safety mobile app for the field workers that will monitor their well-being and safety across people attending the wind farms. The second use case that I would like to discuss and showcase is hydro catchment. So we utilize satellite images. You've heard that at least 2 times from Chris and Ashley. Effectively, we tasked a satellite to go above a designated area of interest and take a satellite imagery. And we utilize those imagery to build the platform and evaluate a situation completely different than sending people out there. And AI won't replace the actual people. Instead, it will be an opportunity to optimize workflow and workflow streams and maximize as well resources where necessary. In terms of the business value, because that's the purpose as well of the advisory, is we measured through the solution approximately 12 million worth of revenue of savings, which is around 10% of the annual channeled rainwater levels. And the last use case, and this is where the surprise actually is, it was around species detection and specifically puffins. So it's those lovely creatures that you can see on the bottom right side. Those creatures are lovely, but they're notoriously difficult to monitor. So SSE wanted to monitor and detect those species for regulatory, basically, purposes. So we developed an AI model to kind of build a report and build an interface very, very quickly. We are now at the stage where we install cameras at the Isle of May. It's happening basically, there is a recce visit on Friday where people will be wearing real wear headset, get a real-time view of insights for us to agree where we need actually to install the cameras for the solution actually to take place. So in a nutshell, all those prototypes were developed in 5 weeks. We showed diversity, innovation, engagement, and the environment we created for SSE is looking to deploy new technology and looking for opportunities to deploy this technology and improve the performance of the business. This is where our team, as Data and AI Advisory, can help them. Thank you very much.